On September the 26th, 1879, a man named John King checked into Stone's Hotel in Deadwood, South Dakota. He went to sleep. He never woke up, not because of an outlaw, not because of a gunfight, because the building burned down around him while he was unconscious, and he was deaf. He never heard the screams. That is what sleeping in the Wild West actually looked like. Not the guns, not the showdowns. The building you were paying to sleep in. Here are 20 disturbing truths about frontier hotels that the history books chose to leave out. Let's begin with fact number 1, and it starts the moment you walk through the door. You have just ridden 3 days across open country. Your bones ache. You walk into a frontier hotel, hand over your coins, and the clerk tells you the room already has someone in it. A stranger. Someone you have never met. Tonight, you are sharing his bed. This was not a horror story. This was standard practice. During mining rushes and cattle drive seasons, hotels were so catastrophically overcrowded that management assigned guests to whatever sleeping space remained, regardless of who was already in it. You did not choose your roommate. The hotel chose for you. Travelers wrote of waking up next to men who had checked in after midnight while they were already asleep. 2 strangers, 1 bed, no discussion. And complaining got you nowhere. There was no other room. There was no other hotel. You either shared or you slept in the street. Fact number 2 takes that discomfort somewhere considerably darker, and it involves the most vulnerable travelers on the frontier. Single women on the frontier were among the most vulnerable people alive, and the hotel was where that vulnerability was most exposed. Harassment from drunk male guests was so common that newspapers treated it as unremarkable. Theft of luggage, theft of cash, drunken men stumbling into the wrong room after midnight, all documented in court records across Kansas, Nevada, and Colorado. Many women traveling alone refused to give their real names at hotel registers. They used false identities and told no one their plans. Not from paranoia, from experience. The frontier had taught them exactly what happened when a woman's location became known to the wrong person. In a country supposedly building civilization from wilderness, a woman could not check into a hotel under her real name without putting herself at serious risk. That truth never made it into the Westerns. Fact number 3. And this is the detail that shows you exactly how those women responded. Those same women checking in under false names, telling no one where they were, all did the same thing before going to sleep. They pushed the furniture against the door, not in one place, not in one decade, everywhere, consistently. Diaries, letters, and newspaper accounts from the 1870s and 1880s describe the same ritual. Drag the wardrobe, wedge the trunk, press it all flush against the door before lying down, because the lock was not enough. Everyone who had stayed in frontier lodgings before already knew this. A wooden latch or worn bolt could be defeated by any determined boot heel in under 3 seconds. So the furniture became the real lock, the wardrobe was the security system, and if the hotel had genuinely been safe, nobody would have needed to barricade themselves in every single night. Since you are already 3 facts in, and this is clearly your kind of content, hit the subscribe button right now. We put out buried history like this every week, and 17 more facts are waiting right below this one. It takes 2 seconds, and it means you will not miss what comes next. Now, back to the frontier. Fact number 4 explains how all of this became so catastrophically widespread in the first place. The California Gold Rush of 1849 sent 300,000 people into a region built for a few thousand. The Colorado Silver Rush did it again in the 1870s. Then Deadwood. Then Tombstone. Then Dodge City, when tens of thousands of cattle and the men driving them hit a town built from tents and timber less than 3 years before. Hotels built for 30 guests were sleeping 100. Boarding houses designed for 12 had 60 on the floor. During the Nevada silver boom, a Dublin newspaper reported 300 men sleeping in, quote, a tinderbox not bigger than a first-class chicken coop. There was no infrastructure, no sewage, no plan, only the stampede. Thousands arriving every week in towns with nowhere near enough shelter and no authority to say stop. These were not poorly run hotels. They were towns swallowed whole by a human flood, with no way to fight back. Fact number 5. And this one explains why the noise never stopped, and the danger never went away. Across the frontier, hotels and saloons shared the same building, the same owner, and very often the same front door. This was not an accident. It was a business model. The saloon owner understood something simple. Men who drank until midnight needed somewhere to fall down. If that place was directly above the bar, the same man who sold you whiskey also collected your room rate. The Crystal Palace and the Oriental Saloon in Tombstone operated exactly this way. So did countless establishments across Dodge City, Virginia City, and Abilene. The consequence for sleeping guests? The noise, the shouting, the fistfights, the piano music, none of it stayed downstairs. It traveled through the floor and into every room above. You did not book a room in a hotel. You booked a floor above a saloon. Think booking a room today directly above a nightclub with no noise ordinances, and the club owner also owns your bed. Fact number 6 hits before anything else goes wrong, because the door itself was already a problem. Before experiencing any other frontier horror, you had to deal with one basic problem. The door to your room probably did not lock properly. Many frontier boarding houses used simple wooden latches a child could lift from outside with a wire. Others had worn bolts that no longer aligned with the strike plate. Some rooms used padlocks any knife blade could pop in 10 seconds. And some had no lock at all, just a hook-and-eye fastening that any adult leaning against the door could snap free without effort. In the absolute bottom tier of frontier lodging, the divider between your sleeping space and the man beside you was not even a wall. It was a strip of old newspaper draped over a rope. That was the partition. The lock on your door was not security. It was a polite suggestion, and everyone in the building already knew it. Fact number 7. You made it to your room. You lay down. That was the trap. The mattress looked fine when you settled in. The problem started after dark. Cheap frontier boarding houses used mattresses stuffed with straw, dried corn husks, or old grass materials impossible to clean or heat treat. They became permanent insect colonies. Bedbugs, fleas, lice, all of them waiting in the stuffing and seams of the ticking, ready the moment the room went dark. Guests wrote about waking covered in bites from the soles of their feet to the back of their necks. The bugs moved freely because nothing stopped them, no pesticides, no cleaning protocols, no inspections whatsoever. The mattress was occasionally restuffed. It was never sanitized. And this was not a scandal at one bad hotel. It was the baseline condition of frontier accommodation everywhere. Fact number 8. And the people who had been here before had already worked out the answer. Cowboys knew. Veteran miners knew. Commercial travelers making regular runs between frontier towns absolutely knew. They all carried their own bedding, personal blankets, personal bedrolls, not because they were fussy, but because they had made the mistake of using hotel bedding once, learned the hard way, and never made that mistake again. Trusting the hotel sheets was the mark of someone who had never done it before. When a group of experienced people all independently adopt the same workaround, that workaround tells you everything about the original problem. The people who knew what they were doing did not touch the hotel's bedding. That single fact says more than any description could. Fact number 9. The walls were almost no walls at all. Frontier hotels were built for speed and built for cheap. When a boomtown needed beds for 500 men in a matter of weeks, nobody stopped to consider acoustics or privacy. They put up walls as fast as possible with whatever was on hand. The result was walls, sometimes a single plank thick. One board between you and the next room. Whispered conversations came through clearly. Every sound a person made believing no one could hear, the crying, the praying, the coughing traveled through with no resistance. John Wesley Hardin, one of the most notorious gunmen in frontier history, reportedly fired through the wall of his Abilene hotel room to silence a man snoring next door. Whether every detail is exact, nobody disputes that frontier hotel walls were thin enough for the shot to matter. That story has survived 150 years. Everybody heard everything. Nobody said a word about it. Fact number 10 follows directly from that, because clean water on the frontier was almost non-existent. In 1871, Tucson, a city of 3,000 people, had exactly one bathtub in the entire settlement, hand-filled with buckets. The most accessible bath for most men was at the barber shop, 25 cents, one bucket of hot water, a small wooden tub. In that environment, hotel sheets went weeks between washings. Blankets went months. The same bedding touched dozens of strangers in sequence, accumulating everything each left behind: sweat, blood from insect bites, tobacco residue without being washed between guests. The blanket on your bed had been shared by strangers many times over, and none of them had cleaned it afterward. This was not the exception at one careless establishment. This was the industry standard, from Abilene to Sacramento. Fact number 11. Close your eyes for this one and try to build it in your head. Unwashed bodies in an airless room with zero ventilation. Cigar smoke soaked so deep into the wooden walls, it had become part of the wood. Whiskey absorbed into raw floorboards over years. Wet leather boots drying by a stove. A chamber pot already used once, sitting under the bed, waiting for morning. All of that compressed into a room the size of a modern bedroom, with the window nailed shut against the cold, for 8 hours straight. Travelers described frontier lodgings in their diaries as something between a stable and a saloon. One visitor passing through Nevada wrote that the smell hit you before you even opened the door and stayed on your clothes for 2 full days after leaving. You did not just sleep in it. You breathed every molecule of it all night long. There was nowhere for it to go, and no version of the morning that made it better. Fact number 12. Because even if you survived the smell, the noise gave you no peace. There was no such thing as a quiet night in a Wild West boomtown. Not in Dodge City during cattle season. Not in Tombstone during the silver boom. Not in Deadwood during the gold rush. Gunshots in the street. Piano music hammering through the floor. Horses stamping outside. Drunken arguments at full volume through walls thin enough for every word to arrive clearly in your room. And just when things started winding down around 2 in the morning, the next rotation arrived miners off the late shift. Drovers who had just ridden in, travelers who had made town after dark and needed a room right now. Sleep on the frontier was not rest. It was unconsciousness stolen in pieces between interruptions. A peaceful night in a Wild West boomtown simply did not exist. Fact number 13. And this one followed you all the way into the bed. Your money was never safe in a frontier hotel room. Not in the drawer, not under the pillow, not in your luggage. Stealing from hotel guests was a cottage industry. Professional thieves moved from town to town doing nothing else. Hotel staff supplemented wages by going through guest belongings after dark. Experienced travelers responded with elaborate systems. Cash sewn into coat linings. Coins pressed into the soles of boots. Bills folded into money belts worn directly against the skin, day and night. For women, the corset became a practical financial instrument. The most reliable safe on the frontier was your own body. Your money did not go in your pocket. It went against your skin, because your body was the one security system nobody could access while you were asleep. Fact number 14. And this is the one where everything you have heard so far comes together in one image. Because of insects in the bedding, because of theft, because of fire risk, and because violence could arrive at any moment, experienced frontier travelers did not undress to go to sleep. They lay down in full clothing, boots on, not from modesty, not from cold, because being caught unprepared in a frontier emergency fire, robbery, a fight spilling up from the saloon, could get you killed before you found your shoes. Think about what that calculation actually means. You are lying on an insect-infested mattress in a room that smells like a stable, next to a stranger, with a saloon thundering below. And you are keeping your boots on because you might need to be through that door in 3 seconds. That is not a hotel stay. That is sleeping in a combat zone, dressed for it. Fact number 15. And this one was the open secret that nobody with authority chose to address. Not every room in a frontier hotel was being rented for sleep. And in many prominent buildings on a boomtown's main street, that was understood by virtually everyone and acknowledged officially by no one. In towns where law enforcement was minimal or indifferent, certain hotels adjacent to saloons ran a dual business. The hotel provided the rooms. The saloon provided the clients. Deadwood had its Badlands district where this was not hidden at all. Tombstone's operations ran steps from its most respectable-looking hotels. The sign said hotel. The register said hotel. Some rooms were hotel rooms. The others were something else entirely, operating behind the same walls, under the same roof. Fact number 16. There was no bathroom. There was only this. The outhouse was outside. Down the street, possibly a full block away, in complete darkness, with no lighting and no guarantee of safety. So every room came with a chamber pot, a ceramic or tin vessel stored under the bed, used by every person sleeping in that room, which could be 2 strangers or 6 men on rotating shifts. In the morning it was emptied. Usually, better establishments had staff for it. In cheaper places it sat until someone remembered it. There was no bathroom. There was a pot, under the bed, used by strangers. In the same room, where you were sleeping in your boots, on a lice-infested mattress, next to someone you had never met before tonight. Fact number 17, and everything we have covered so far was the slow misery. This one could end your life before dawn. Every material that built a frontier hotel was flammable. Sap-filled pine walls coated in decades of tobacco smoke, oil lamps for light, wood stoves burning through the night. No fire codes, no fire escapes, no water infrastructure, close enough to matter. We opened with John King, the deaf guest who never heard the Deadwood alarm. But that fire was one of dozens. The same September 1879, blaze destroyed over 300 buildings and left nearly 2,000 people homeless after a coal oil lamp tipped over in a bakery at 2:30 in the morning and hit a hardware store storing gunpowder kegs. Virginia City burned. Tombstone burned. Dozens of boomtowns burned, rebuilt in wood, and burned again. The biggest danger in a Wild West hotel was never the man with the gun. It was the lamp beside your head at 2 in the morning. Fact number 18. We talked about sharing a bed with one stranger. During rush season, it went far further than that. Boarding house records from California and Colorado document rooms, designed for 2, holding 6, 7, and 8 men, on cots, on blankets, on bare wooden floors. And in the most extreme cases, the cot itself ran on a rotation. One man left for the mines at 4 in the morning. Another man, just off the night shift, took his place in the same cot. Same sheets, same still warm pillow. The mattress never went cold. The system ran continuously, day and night, season after season. Organized human stacking, from one end of the mining frontier to the other, for years, at a stretch. Fact number 19. Now, take everything you have heard, and add winter, the insects, the smell, the strangers, the noise that was the summer baseline. Winter made it something entirely different. Frontier hotel walls were a single plank of pine between you and the outside air. No insulation, no weather sealing of any kind. The cold came through the walls the way water moves through cloth slowly at first, then completely. Heating stoves burned out before dawn. By 2 or 3 in the morning, the room could drop below freezing. Wet boots froze solid overnight. Frost formed on the inside of window glass. Men wrote of pulling blankets completely over their faces, just to create a small pocket of warm, breathable air. The cold moved through the wall and into your bed with you, and it stayed there until morning light. In winter, the insects and the smell and the strangers were the least of your problems. Staying warm was the only thing that mattered. What was ordinarily miserable became something much closer to survival. And finally, fact number 20. We have saved the most uncomfortable truth for last. While the average frontier traveler slept boot-clad on a lice-infested mattress, sharing a room with strangers, breathing suffocating air, and pressing their money against their skin to keep it safe somewhere else on the same continent, in the same era, someone was sleeping in extraordinary comfort. The Palace Hotel in San Francisco opened in 1875. 755 large rooms, 804 fireplace mantels, private toilets, white linen dining rooms, its own brick factory and oak forest for building materials. The Brown Palace in Denver opened in 1892 with an 8-story atrium and private baths that would have seemed like pure fiction to anyone who had spent a night in a Nevada boarding house. These places existed on the same continent, under the same sky, in the same era. The gap between those two worlds was not small. It was the gap between a civilization and the raw machinery that was building one. Most people who crossed the American West, the miners, the drovers, the women traveling under false names, the men sleeping in their boots, never saw the inside of a building like the Palace Hotel. They just needed to make it to morning. And most nights, that was enough. Now, we want to hear from you. Have you ever checked into a hotel and thought this is genuinely awful? A dirty room? A broken lock? A stranger where there should not have been one? Drop your worst hotel stay in the comments below. After everything you just learned about the Wild West, yours might not seem so bad, or it might be closer than you think. If you made it to Fact 20, thank you for staying with us. Hit the like button, subscribe, so you never miss what we dig up next, and we will see you in the next one.